You spend the last year watching chatbots confidently invent completely fake court cases and hallucinate reality, and now the tech industry expects you to hand over your banking passwords to an artificial.
Perplexity's new computer agent just integrated with Plaid's network of over 12,000 banks.
Pulling in checking, credit, loan, and brokerage data directly.
We are staring at a stack of financial and tech reports detailing how this entire industry pivoted from chatty search assistants to autonomous financial agents.
They drive massive revenue spikes and quietly rewrite the starting point of your digital activity.
Gathering this source material was an absolute chore.
I spent half the morning blocked by Cloudflare security services trying to access techpranks.com for financial research. I had to submit a Ray ID and click on grainy pictures of traffic lights just to prove my biological existence to a machine.
You are proving you are human just so you can read financial data about other machines.
We are building an internet where humans are treated like suspicious intruders.
Perplexity stopped trying to out-Google Google. They decided to go after Mint and TurboTax directly.
Handing a large language model direct read and write access to a brokerage account is like financial suicide. You know, taking a system famous for struggling with basic arithmetic and letting it monitor your 401k.
The market disagrees with your risk assessment. The company hit $450 million in annual recurring revenue in March.
That is a 50% jump in a single month.
The financial data anchors this massive shift in strategy.
Making a $150 million leap in 4 weeks does not feel like standard business growth. It's like putting on your winter coat and finding a winning lottery ticket in the pocket every single morning.
You wake up and check your corporate balance.
Suddenly, the GDP of a small island nation is flooding into your accounts. They generate this unprecedented cash by promising to do your taxes autonomously.
TaxSlayer ran 4 major AI models through 8 fictional tax scenarios last month.
So they tested the actual arithmetic.
Those models hallucinated an average of $2,000 in miscalculations. They misread the tax code and hallucinated phantom liabilities out of thin air.
$2,000 in tax miscalculations is the difference between affording rent and facing a severe financial penalty from the federal government.
They failed to calculate standard deductions correctly.
Standard chatbots operate like a friend who read a Wikipedia article 3 years ago and speaks with unearned confidence. You ask a large language model to calculate complex tax liabilities on a freelance 1099 form.
It guesses the next logical word in a sentence rather than performing actual arithmetic.
It guesses its way straight into an IRS audit.
Perplexity built a structural fix for that exact gap. Their tax agent uses loadable modules built on the Agent Skills Protocol.
Explain how that actually functions, because Agent Skills Protocol sounds like corporate marketing jargon. What is the machine doing differently when it sees my W-2?
The architecture abandons pure predictive text entirely. The system is continuously grounded in current IRS materials.
So it stops guessing based on internet training data.
The agent essentially puts on a highly specialized tool belt. When it encounters a tax question, it reaches into the tool belt and pulls out a calculator.
It accesses a live, updated database of the 2025 tax code.
It pulls the specific current regulation. It applies the mathematical logic required by the form and populates the fields based on actual documentation.
It turns off the creative writing engine and turns on the rigid compliance engine.
It functions strictly as an accountant following a rigid checklist. The creative writing engine shuts down completely.
They're expanding this product line rapidly beyond just taxes. They launched Comet, an AI browser that acts on your behalf.
We are accustomed to the browser acting as a passive window.
You type a URL and do the manual work of reading and clicking. Comet functions as an active participant. I want to walk through what that actually looks like on a screen.
You tell Comet to buy a specific brand of coffee beans.
The browser opens a new tab autonomously.
It navigates to the roaster's website and visually scans the page for the checkout button.
It clicks it, navigates to the shopping cart, fills in your saved credit card information, and hits purchase.
You sit back and watch the mouse cursor move by itself like a ghost possesses your machine.
The browser takes over the physical inputs. It simulates human interaction with the digital environment.
The technical complexity of that action is massive. If the coffee roaster redesigns their website overnight and moves the checkout button, Comet has to adapt immediately.
It uses computer vision to figure out the new layout in real time.
It handles shopping, summarizes social media feeds, sends emails, and executes voice commands dynamically.
The user base hit 100 million monthly active users taking advantage of these agentic features. Offering that level of automated labor to 100 million people introduces a massive financial liability for the company providing the service.
Usage-based pricing alters the business model entirely to support that activity,
Subscriptions cost between $20 and $200 a month.
giving users a set number of computational credits. Premium users pay extra when they exceed their limits.
Traditional software subscriptions rely on a flat fee. You pay a set amount for a streaming service regardless of whether you watch one movie or 50.
An AI browser expends massive compute power with every single action it takes on your behalf.
Why is clicking a button on a coffee website so much more expensive than streaming a massive 4K movie to my television? The movie contains gigabytes of high-definition data.
Streaming a movie requires retrieving a static file sitting on a server.
The work was already done during the filming and rendering process.
The server simply hands you a copy of a file that already exists.
When Comet navigates a website, an array of graphics processing units must evaluate the page layout.
They run computer vision algorithms to identify the correct button and generate a unique sequence of actions in real time.
The variable costs scale directly with the user's reliance on the tool.
Generating a novel action requires active, continuous computation that burns real electricity and silicon.
How does anyone run a business when revenue predictability vanishes the second a user decides to run out of credits?
A software company usually relies on a steady, predictable stream of monthly subscription income to plan their hiring and infrastructure costs.
Now, a sudden spike in user activity could bankrupt a startup if the compute costs from the server farm exceed the revenue generated by the user credits.
You look at Perplexity's numbers next to the rest of the market, and the scale of the competition becomes clear. Cursor hit $2 billion in annual recurring revenue.
Anthropic sits at $19 billion. OpenAI generated $20 billion last year.
Perplexity went from a $500 million valuation in early 2024 to $20 billion by September 2025.
Investors price in the transition from software as a service to software as a labor replacement.
The market values these companies based on their potential to absorb tasks previously handled by salaried human employees.
A predictable subscription model matters less to an investor than capturing a fraction of the global corporate payroll budget.
Someone needs to explain how these companies are physically powering this massive scale of autonomous tasks without melting their server farms into puddles of liquid metal.
Every time one of those 100 million users asks an agent to execute a multi-step tax calculation, a physical machine somewhere has to run that process.
Or summarize a decade of financial data.
We hear about the sleek interfaces and the user adoption numbers. We rarely discuss the concrete industrial reality of the electricity and silicon required to generate those responses.
If Perplexity has 100 million users running these heavy inference models simultaneously, the physical heat generated by those data centers must be catastrophic.
You cannot just infinitely scale software when the software requires physical turbines to generate the electricity required to cool the processors.
Water consumption spikes. Energy grids strain under the load.
Andy Jassy's Amazon shareholder letter contains the receipts for that exact industrial reality.
AWS's artificial intelligence arm crossed $15 billion in annualized revenue.
Amazon's custom chips crossed $20 billion in yearly revenue.
The market assumes NVIDIA holds a total monopoly on the hardware required to run artificial intelligence.
Amazon quietly built an internal silicon empire to bypass that bottleneck entirely. They designed Trainium for training the heavy models and Graviton for running the daily inference tasks.
Building internal chips removes the dependency on NVIDIA's supply chain.
Two unnamed AWS customers tried to buy Amazon's entire Graviton chip supply for 2026.
That is like buying every single drop of gasoline in the country just so your neighbor has to walk to work.
Companies are hoarding compute power. They view server racks as strategic national reserves.
If you control the hardware supply, you dictate who survives the expansion of these autonomous agents.
Startups die not because they wrote bad code, but because they could not secure the silicon required to run the code.
Amazon had to decline the multi-billion-dollar offer just to protect their other clients' access to the infrastructure.
Amazon is now floating the idea of selling racks of these chips directly to third parties.
NVIDIA finally has serious competition on the supply side, just as market demand peaks.
AWS realizes that providing the foundational hardware offers a more stable revenue stream than fighting over fluctuating consumer software subscriptions.
They supply the picks and shovels for the entire autonomous economy.
Building the underlying infrastructure removes the risk of guessing which AI startup will win the consumer market.
Supplying the picks and shovels guarantees a profit, regardless of who finds gold.
The focus often stays on the massive corporate infrastructure, but everyday users are bypassing the billion-dollar data centers.
People are building custom Notion agents using simple databases for tasks and reports.
You do not actually need Amazon's Server Farm to build an autonomous agent anymore. You can build micro-agents in your living room.
They build scheduling agents to read emails and summarize action items autonomously.
A user sets up a trigger.
The agent reads the last 7 days of emails every Monday morning and logs the data into a report.
The administrative work is off their plate entirely.
It is like playing with digital Legos.
You snap an email API into a summarization model, and suddenly you have a free administrative assistant running on your personal laptop. We are outsourcing the friction of daily life to tiny lines of code.
Oxford University researchers applied that same logic to medical diagnostics.
They trained an AI system to predict heart failure 5 years early with 86% accuracy across 72,000 patients.
Wait, how does an algorithm see half a decade into the future on a routine medical scan?
A standard CT scan takes a picture of anatomy at a fixed moment in time.
The camera captures the organ exactly as it exists today. It cannot photograph an event that has not happened yet.
Fat around the heart shifts texture when the muscle beneath becomes inflamed.
The AI detects patterns invisible to human doctors.
A human radiologist looks at the scan and sees standard tissue.
The algorithm analyzes the precise density and texture of the pericoronary fat to detect microscopic signs of inflammation long before the heart muscle actually begins to fail.
It identifies the physiological precursors that will eventually trigger the cardiac event.
It finds a shadow of the disease before the disease arrives.
That implies our bodies broadcast warning signs constantly, and we simply lack the sensory equipment to read the signals until we trained an agent to look closer.
Finding a shadow 5 years early changes the entire definition of preventative medicine.
A patient walks in with a mild cough, and the machine tells them they have half a decade to avoid a fatal heart attack.
Patients in the highest risk bucket developed heart failure at a rate 20 times higher than those flagged as safe.
Oxford is pushing to extend this to all chest CT scans in National Health Service hospitals within months.
The agent operates as a preventative diagnostic layer running quietly in the background of existing medical infrastructure.
Patients undergo a routine scan for a completely unrelated issue, like a minor chest infection.
The algorithm reviews the file and flags a massive cardiac event scheduled for 5 years down the line.
Telling a patient they have a scheduled cardiac event in half a decade creates a massive psychological burden.
The medical system has to figure out how to handle a prediction from a black box when the patient currently feels perfectly healthy.
Habitual use changes the starting point of digital activity entirely.
You stop opening a search engine to find a tax professional.
You open a delegated task manager that files the forms automatically.
The tools move from answering questions to initiating actions on our behalf.
We outsource our executive function to the browser.
The friction of everyday administration disappears when an agent anticipates the requirement.
The user no longer initiates the action.
The system predicts the need, secures the necessary resources, bypasses manual approvals, and executes the task before the user realizes a problem exists.
When your browser, your bank account, your tax return, and your hospital diagnostics all rely on automated agents talking to other automated agents, at what point do human beings become the primary bottlenecks in their own lives? You submit a Ray ID just to prove your biological existence to a security wall, and the machines get back to talking to each other.